أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة. أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. صدق الله العظيم. Consider well what He has forwarded for the morrow. Fear Allah, for Allah is well aware of all that you do. Do not be like those who forgot Allah, and Allah caused them to forget their own selves. They indeed are the transgressors. That is, forgetfulness of God inevitably leads to forgetfulness of one's own self. When man forgets that he is slave to the Almighty, he will inevitably form a wrong view of his position in the world, and his whole life will go wrong because of this basic error. Had we set down this Quran upon a mountain, you would have seen it humbling itself and splitting asunder from the fear of Allah. We present these parables before the people so that they may reflect on themselves. He is Allah, besides whom there is no God. He is the knower of the unseen and the seen. He is the compassionate and the merciful. He is Allah, besides whom there is no God. He is the sovereign, the holy, the source of safety, the giver of peace, the guardian, the mighty, the enforcer of His decrees, and the ever supreme. Exalted is Allah alone, who is the planner of creation, its enforcer and its fashioner. His are the excellent names. Whatever is there in the heavens and the earth glorifies Him, and He is the Almighty and the All-Wise. Sadaqallahu al-Adhim.
Jazakallah. Before we continue from here, I'm going to ask if Hafiz Nadeem and Dr. Harun Abbasi can join us in the front, sitting over here. I'm going to call him out. Jazakallah. The next person who's going to be speaking will be Hussain, and he'll just give a brief outline on what ICSA as an organization is doing in this country. Tala.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to extend a warm welcome and thank everyone for coming tonight. We're glad everyone has been enticed by the offer of free food. I do want to assure you that it was all for a good cause. As some of you might have noticed, the chairs and some of the banners have the label ICSA on them. Some of you might be wondering what this is all about. ICSA stands for the Islamic Circle of Southern Africa and is the culmination of many years of hard work. ICSA is an organization with the aim of enriching and strengthening the faith of Muslims in this country, as well as spreading the message of Allah to all corners of the country by serving the community. To better understand the organization, we need to go back a bit and understand the question, why? The core group of ICSA actually started as a simple Quran class over 20 years ago. Many of us here were actually part of those classes. The classes sharpened our Quran reading, but most importantly, we were taught to read and understand the messages behind the words. Ultimately, all questions are answered through the Quran, and those classes acted as a monthly reminder. But the classes remained within the community and didn't affect our greater community. It wasn't until some of our members saw the power of a formal organization in the form of ICNA, Islamic Circle of Northern America, that the seed of ICSA was planted. ICSA is best defined by its motto, faith, unity, service. Not only is this the ethos of the organization, but its game plan as well. ICSA aims to build faith within its members through regular Quran classes where we discuss in depth the meaning of the Quran as well as the seerah of Prophet ﷺ. Islam is inclusive, and the organization strives to do the same by providing anyone access to the class that are tailored for them. There's a class for the gents, ladies, and the youth, as well as Urdu and English classes. That is what we believe helps build faith, by giving constant reminders of the messages of Islam. We now arrive at the next step, unity. Unity is about being an organization and the power it brings. What one struggles to do alone is much more accomplishable as a team. ICSA wants to have an active and strong discourse around its policies and decision-making with everyone included, including the youth and the ladies, being a part of planning, events and programs, running those programs and voting for all levels of leadership. Some examples of these programs include our annual conventions, where we have speakers from all over the world who come to share their knowledge, youth sports days, which include a soccer tournament for the guys and an amazing race for the girls. But unity within the organization is not the only type of unity we strive for. We are actively involved with major organizations and charities such as SANCO, the South African National Charity Organization, to bring relief to underprivileged people in the country. Unity between members and the wider community is what we strive for. Lastly, service. That is the most important of the three, yet without the other two doesn't exist. We are an Islamic organization and strive to spread the message of the Quran to as many people as possible. We do this through fulfilling our obligations to our fellow men through Feed the Hungry schemes, the Shoes and Clothes Project, and our cataract projects. By showing the best side of our faith and helping those in need, we believe we can sincerely pass the message of Islam to them in the best possible manner. ICSA believes in the service of others. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah for that brief on ICSA and its current activities. The next person I'd like to call will be the guest speaker for tonight, Shahid Rehman. I'll ask you to come and sit on the couch while I give an introduction. Our speaker that we have here in front of us has undergrad in finance and a master's degree in Islamic studies with a thesis on the Muslim American millennial identity. He has also been active in the Muslim American space for more than 10 years with a focus on youth development and education, and has been involved in many Islamic school projects in the East Coast. He was also the head of the Study Abroad program, which catered towards Muslim students living within America. He has also led an organization that was focused on improving the Muslim media coverage within the USA. He is currently running a business chamber focused on Muslim businesses and building Muslim political power within the United States. He is also on the board of a learning center in Texas that organized a 3-day seminar for university students in July with Harvard Business School professors and graduates for Muslim college students. Shahid Rehman, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for that introduction. All praise be to Allah. Peace and blessings to His Messenger. I just met Nadeem Bhai Wednesday, but on Monday I received a flyer saying you're speaking on Friday from Nadeem Bhai. So I was a little bit confused. I also heard from the US that, hey, I heard you're speaking in South Africa at an ICSA function on Friday. And when I met Nadeem Bhai on Wednesday, I asked him, Nadeem Bhai, what would you like me to talk about? And he said, well, you work with young people, so just talk about young people things. Does that sound right? Was that what he sold to you guys? And then I asked him, okay, who's going to be in the audience by? He said, well, youth. I said, what is youth? He said, between 20 and 30, but they're going to bring their parents too. I said, okay, I'm understanding. And then when he picked me up today, I saw his two little kids. I said, Nadeem bhai, who is really the audience? So now I'm getting a sense of it. And when I prepared for this, I told my wife the hesitations I'm having. I'm not really sure who the audience is, what exactly they want me to cover. Her advice to me was, you talk too much, don't talk a lot, and you'll be fine. But I wanted to really thread this needle and find something to discuss that I think is relevant for the young people, but also sends a clearer message to our generation and older generation on what our roles and responsibility are as a community. And obviously Nadeem bhai just mentioned to me that if you have any questions at the end of my brief talk, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts and disagree with me or whatever you would like to share or question. Today is Friday. And does everyone know what surah you're supposed to recite on Fridays? Right. And it's the story of the cave. And the story of the cave, for those of you not familiar, it's about young men who found their times so challenging that they had to go afar and go into a cave. And the nice thing about the Quran Kareem is that its message is universal and timeless. So the message of Quran, that is, when the times are difficult for young people, it's a mission, it's a challenge that exists today in every context. It will exist in the future. When I was together with Nadeem bhai on Wednesday, he explained to me some of the challenges that are in South Africa, that the general society is facing. And when he shared those with me, I thought, wow, this is just like America. If you were to guess what is the fastest growing religion in the United States, what would you think? Islam. Atheism. Yes. It is the lack of faith which is the fastest growing in the United States. People have become so absorbed with I, and materialism, and they think that that is going to replace something, a higher calling. And so we should really think about this. The growth of materialism, the growth of nihilism. This is the challenge of not just South Africa or the United States, but it is the challenge of every generation, especially now. And when I look and try to understand, is this problem impacting the Muslim community in the United States? What do you think? Yes, it is. Yes. The history of America is such that Muslims have been coming into America for 150 years. Do you know which group opened the first mosque in America? Anybody, guess? It was actually the Ottomans. There were a combination of Turks, Syrians at that time. And they established a mosque in Chicago in the 1870s. Today, there is no record of them. And they did not come as a small group. They came as 40,000 people. Imagine in the 19th century, you have 40,000 people coming. And if we were to fast forward 30 years later, another community came to America and they established mosques. Albanian community opened mosques in New York. I know some people have been to New York here. Anybody? Okay, all the way in the back. They opened mosques in the Northeast, two of them, 1907, 1913. Today, those institutions, those people do not exist. Only thing that exists is their gravestones. In 2010, my friend went to a Jummah prayer, an Eid prayer in Brooklyn, New York. And 6 people came to Eid namaz. Eid. 3 men and their 3 wives. And they were all in their 60s. So if a people think that if we just come and come and come as a people, it's enough to sustain the growth of Islam in any country over an extended period of time, history begs to differ. Give it 100 years, and you will see no one is immune to the impact of history. So I shared with you what has historically happened in America, but I will share with you some of the other challenges that we face. I started getting very active in Muslim community in an organized way in 2010. I'm originally from Bangladesh, and I'm from a place in New Jersey where when we used to live there was maybe just 12 families. Today in that same area, there's about 12,000 families. And in 2010, inside of the high school, the community, they did a survey to understand the behavior of the high school kids that are in the high school. And they found that more than half of them were smoking, doing drugs, they were promiscuous, they were drinking alcohol. And these are Muslim kids. But our mosques are large. Actually, they are so large that you would be embarrassed. There are so many. In that area where I am from, there's at least 15 mosques. At least. Just think about this. And the problem, it's something that, especially with COVID, you have seen that younger folks are having more than just these challenges. Now they're faced with more mental health issues, depression. 2 years they have not been with other kids. A survey was done in America asking high school kids, this was by Stanford University, what percentage of you know your purpose in life? Do you know what percentage that is? It's 16% of high school students. Imagine you are a student and you have no idea what you are doing, and then you become a college student and you have no idea what you're doing, and then you graduate, you still have no idea what you're doing. This is starting at a very foundational period, and we need to think about this. And what I wanted to tackle today really is how did we, as Muslims, because often when we think of ourselves, we think that we have the religion of Allah, and we think that we have good values, good family, that we're immune from this contagion. How do we get here? I studied, as the brother mentioned, Ahmed Bhai mentioned, part of my thesis was on how Muslim identity is formed in young kids. And really, it forms in 4 ways. There's 4 stages, and I'm sorry to get so technical. The first is religious information. So you tell people drinking is haram. You tell people pray 5 times a day. You tell people don't gamble. You tell them fast. That is information. The second is they practice that information in a context. The third is that becomes institutionalized in who they are, internalized. And then finally, their religious identity is formed. So does anyone remember the 4 steps? I'll repeat it. I'm going to go back to this again and again. First is information. The second is you practice. The third is it's internalized. And then finally, it's your identity. Where do you think there is a disconnect, especially for the kids, between their identity formation? Which of these 4 steps? Information, practice, internalize an identity, where do you think there's a gap? It is not an internalized. In practice. In practice. The way we understand our religion and the raising of our kids is as if we are going to a car shop. We are going to drop off the keys to the car, and you come back 3 hours later, you fix the car. But kids and their development is not like this. We do not drop them off on a Friday, Saturday program, and then they're fixed, or they understand Islam, or they know Islam. No, no. What the kids hear from home, it has to be the same thing they hear from school. It has to be the same thing they see on social media, and it has to be the same things their friends are saying. It has to be everywhere the same. In America, because everything is not the same, there is lots and lots of confusion. What does it mean to be Muslim? They feel stress. My parents are telling me that, I'll give you a great example. In our Islamic tradition, where do you change your clothes? You go to your room, you close the door. Shame is a value. It's something we're taught. But if you go to the gym, everybody changes in front of everybody. You become ashamed of being ashamed. Where do you practice this skill, and where do you internalize it? Do you tell kids, don't go to the gym anymore? That's sometimes what happens. I mean, I think a lot of you, especially the younger folks, I suspect you're very well aware of these challenges because you're living in a society where we're minorities. And when you're a minority in a society, the constant pressure is always there. And the role of us who are older is to reinforce and provide you the tools for resilience. And hopefully we'll get to some of that today. How do we get out of here? Historically, we can always go back to Surah Kahf, or religiously rather. In Surah Kahf, what did the guys do? They actually came together. So coming together in itself, as you have done with the youth empowerment with ICSA, is a protection in itself. So I applaud this effort. But for parents, I want to share a quote from Hazrat Ali. He said, "Do not force your own customs upon your children, for they are in other times than yours." How we are raised is very, very, very different than how our kids should be raised. Many of us are immigrants. Nadim Bhai has been here for only 10, and I'm sorry for picking on Nadim Bhai, poor guy. He's right here in front of me, so yeah, he insisted. Nadim Bhai has been here for 10 years only. I have been in the United States for more than 35 years. My parents were born in Bangladesh. And my mom used to tell me, you know, we used to play with rocks and sticks. You're so lucky. We should have just got you a couple of sticks. You don't need video games. But if you try to raise your kids the same way with the same rocks and sticks, you're not going to get very far. The best example I have is imagine a farmer in Brazil. You know, Brazil produces some of the best watermelons, the best. And that same farmer goes to Siberia. He plants the seeds, and nothing is produced, and he says, "What's wrong with these seeds?" I hope it's a clear analogy. Okay, good. So let's go back. Again, there are solutions to these challenges, but I want to also offer prophetic examples. Rasulullah ﷺ, in his time, we all know that he kept young people next to him. And really how we understand religion today, but also how do we understand the contributions of Islam and its expansion so quickly is through those young people around him. And I want to give 3 specific examples for 2 reasons. One is for young people to know anything is possible, and for the second reason, so I am reminded that we can trust younger folks with tremendous responsibility. At the age of 18, Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu was head of an army despite Hazrat Abu Bakr and Umar being in that same army. Our Prophet put him in charge. Zayn bin Thabit, he was 13 at the time of Badr. Hazrat Ali appointed him as responsible for the compilation of the Quran. I'm sure Hazrat Ali could have done it. I'm sure Hazrat Abu Bakr could have done it. I'm sorry, it was Hazrat Abu Bakr who appointed him. Excuse me. A lot of other people could have done it. But why a young man? The first person that Rasulullah sent to Medina was Mus'ab. And he was a young man to go and preach to Medina. So when you look at the pillars of society, whether it's the warrior class, whether it's knowledge, or whether it's the spread of Islam, you see that the young people are the foundations of all of those. And what happens if we properly invest in young folks? We all can see the fruits. When Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was Khalifa, they were so poor, the Sahabas. But when you look at the transition into Hazrat Umar, they were so rich that there was nobody to give zakat to. That is only in one generation. If the investment is made in the younger generation, we will see returns immediately. And this is not something that only we should see from a perspective of religion. Nadim Bhai on Wednesday, he took me to visit the Apartheid Museum. And I was so impressed by the role that Christianity played in the movement, but also the impact it had in shaping Mandela. Mandela talked about the role the Methodist Church played in his later life when he was a kid. He talked about the establishment of a youth league on Easter in 1944. And that was a real catalyst for the change you saw in this country. So this is not necessarily something that is only to be shown to us by Christians. We are the Muslims, we are the inventors of this. And we need to rethink what our role in this is. And finally, there are institutions that should play a role, like ICSA. I want you to consider what the prophetic masjid was during Rasulullah's time and what is the masjid today. I'm sure it's not like this in South Africa, but in America, the masjid has become a prayer space. You go, you do namaz, goodbye. But during our Prophet's time, the kids played games there. They accepted delegations. There was learning happening. Everything happened. So I want for us who are older to rethink what is an institution. Because remember, the third thing was internalize those values, but you cannot internalize those values without practice. Nobody tells a kid, here, Nadim Bhai, your kid is 12 years old. Here are the car keys. Here is the driving manual. Go learn how to drive. You take the kid to the driving course. He practices. He has internalized driving. And then you put him on the road. Without giving a place to internalize values, we are setting people up for accidents. I'll just give a couple of more examples. I touched on the gym. Another very important thing, Islam mandates, Rasulullah mandates that you must teach your kids how to swim. And Nadim Bhai and I talked about this Wednesday. If Islam tells you you have to teach your kids how to swim, and you have a daughter, do you say that the pool has boys and we're not going to send our daughters to swim? Because there's no place. The problem is not that the allowances are not there, it's that we are not creating the place for them to do their things. And I just wanted to look at part of my studies. I looked at other individuals, other organizations, other communities that were very successful. And one of those groups, obviously, are our cousins, the Jewish people. And in America, they are so successful, despite the fact that their population is so old. In America, 52% of Muslims are under the age of 30. 52%. We are raising a very, very young generation. The Jews are raising an older generation, and so they see the value in preserving what they have. And what have they done? They have gone to universities. So when I saw that ICSA's office was right next to the university, I said, wow, you are in the heart of the work. They, instead of waiting for the Jewish kids to come to them at the synagogue, they went to the universities and did programs for them. Not even religious, bring Jewish people together. And when they understand the caliber and the religiosity, they design different programs for those individuals. They have done this to such an excellent degree that, do you know when we lose people in life? We lose people when there is a transition. So when somebody goes from middle school to high school, they see drugs for the first time. If you don't have something ready for them, you're going to lose them. When they go from high school to college, if you are not ready for them, you're going to lose them, because then they're going to stay in the dorm. They will do other things. Then you lose them when they go to work, because work in itself is a very complicated environment. So you must be there in their transitions. And what did the Jewish community do? They established a similar institution for their young professionals. So you should just come together with your other people. So just think about these things. One thing that I'm going to emphasize a lot, and then this is pretty much the gist of what I have to say. For the young folks, and the guys here, do not underestimate the value of being a mentor and establishing a strong mentorship program. I described to you 100 different problems. For the older folks, it is to open a path through the institutions. For the younger folks, you cannot escape this responsibility. You have something to do, and that's to mentor. If you tell me you're 12 and you're too young, I'm going to find you a 10-year-old. Everyone is looking for a role model. Someone who is successful, someone who understands the times. In Texas, they saw that they had a problem with teen pregnancies. So they tried to tell teens, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And do you think that was successful? No success. Then they thought, let me think about this as a young person. And they started taking billboard ads with young girls saying, oh no, I'm no longer beautiful anymore, I'm this, I'm that. And when they reframed it for something that a high school kid would think about, or a college kid, the pregnancy rates went down substantially. In Texas, when they told people, don't litter, people didn't care. But when they said, it's the manly thing to do, don't mess with Texas, don't litter, it went down tremendously. So again, this type of framework is something that only younger people can understand. We can't. How many of us are on TikTok? Nobody. Wow. Oh, Bai here is on. That's very impressive. I still have not figured out how to download. I downloaded it once, and I could not figure out how to register. So, you know. Once upon a time, this is my last story, and I'm done. There was a young boy, he was playing on the roof of a house. And the people were looking, they were very scared. They said, this kid is going to fall. The more they tell the kid, come down, the more the kid is getting closer to the ledge. And they bought the wise ruler. The ruler laughed and said, find me another kid, and here are some dates. tell the kid to come down. And so the little other kid who was the same age as that kid went to the dates and said, let's go play. Happily ever after everyone lived. And that ruler was Hazrat Ali. And the message here is very simple. If you want to solve the problem of young folks, use other young folks. I hope that concludes my presentation.